Germany's chancellor has come out and said that trust among allies remains high. This despite the intercept of a telephone call involving top German brass that was leaked to the Telegram social media channel by Russia. Olaf Scholz's comments come a day after the German defense minister also commented on the leaked call was about the possible delivery of Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. Olaf Scholz so far publicly rejecting, his defense minister more equivocal.
There is absolutely no doubt that it's part of an information war that Vladimir Putin is waging. It is a hybrid attack aimed at disinformation. It's about division. It's about undermining our resolve. Therefore, we should respond in a level-headed, yet resolute manner.
And that brings us to our top story segment. And we say hello to Benjamin Tallis, Senior Research Fellow at the German Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Good evening from Berlin. A pleasure to be here.
Let me ask you, first off, Boris Pistorius seems to be implying that it's not actually a firm rejection, Taurus missiles going to Ukraine.
Well, yes. I mean, Pistorius has been one of the figures in German politics and in the German government pushing for Taurus to be sent. The opposition lies in the Chancellery, and Olaf Scholz was very clear about this. He's repeatedly stated they won't be sent, even though his reasons for doing so have been revealed as excuses, not least on that leaked call. And he said as long as he's Chancellor, that's going to stay the case, or that it is the case because he is Chancellor.
What is the reaction in Germany to the leaked caller? Does that make people more gun-shy, or does it make them want to take on Russia more?
It's a very good question. And I think the most important thing to understand about public opinion in relation to these issues, as with any foreign and security policy issue, is actually the effect that elite discourse and elite interventions have on it. So public opinion is actually shaped by the politicians and the experts involved in the public debate on this. And what you've seen is that contest over whether to take a more assertive approach to Russia or whether to continue to tread very carefully, as Scholz is doing, continue in the last few days. So Scholz has very much been trying to position himself as a peace chancellor now, taking this approach that some have criticized for being close to appeasement of the Putin regime, or risking that at least, whereas Pistorius has come out swinging and said this is part of what he mentioned on your clip, a hybrid war against Germany. And I think that's the way a lot of the politicians in the coalition are viewing this, that they are already involved in a conflict with Russia, even though by legal definitions, Germany is not a war party, and sending Taurus wouldn't change that.
Olaf Scholz, excuse me, but sounds, once again, we've said this before, a lot like Angela Merkel. You remember the old joke that she can be counted to do the right thing after exhausting every other option. He has changed his opinion so much when it comes to sending weapons to Ukraine since 2022.
Well, he has and he hasn't. I mean, there was the initial burst of enthusiasm in the Zeitenwende speech in February 2022, on February 27th, so 2 years ago. But that was really driven by a faulty threat assessment that thought that Ukraine would lose, that Kiev would fall in a number of days, and that Germany could be facing a fired-up Russia, emboldened by that victory, much closer to its own borders. When the Ukrainians fought back, it really took the air out of that process of transformation. And while Germany has come a long way, it was starting from a very low baseline. And I think allies are now fed up with Germany measuring its transformation against its willingness to break its own self-imposed taboos, rather than against the needs of the situation. And that's why the frustration with Taurus is really coming in and boiling over the surface at the moment. And you can also see it in the very different approach in Scholz's public communication from that of Emmanuel Macron, for example.
On the subject of Emmanuel Macron, what do Germans make of his attempt to show strategic ambiguity last week to a reporter's question suggesting that, yeah, sending troops to Ukraine could be an option?
Well, I think it's caused some concern here. There's no doubt about that because of this fear of being drawn into the war. But that's also due to or let's say more directly being drawn into the war, but that's also due to a bit of a lack of understanding about strategy and about this need for strategic ambiguity, as well as about how deterrence actually works. So I think what Macron was doing was driving the conversation forward, making Taurus actually seem like a sort of midway step rather than the extreme limit of what is being pushed for at the moment by mentioning the possibility of putting boots on the ground. And I think that was quite a clever thing to do in many ways. And some allies certainly agreed with that. Scholz and others didn't, and they saw it as a risky move. But I think this, as I say, this reflects a lack of understanding about how deterrence works, because as well as the capabilities to defend yourself, you need to show your willingness to stand up for yourself, your interests, your values, and to use those capabilities. And that's the signal that Macron is projecting, also when he tells us we should take courage and really stand up. Whereas Olaf Scholz's approach is projecting weakness, which actually makes us more of a target and makes war more, not less likely.
And how much fallout has there been now with what is it? The news that this leak was made possible not so much by the fact that they used the WebEx messaging app, but rather that one of the participants in the call used his hotel room phone.
Yes, I mean, it does rather reflect the carelessness of the approach here. And that is something that the German Bundeswehr is looking into. But it's interesting that Boris Pistorius, the defense minister, has said that pending further revelations, he would be standing by his senior officers. And I think that's a smart strategic move because Pistorius, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the people who has been pushing for real reform and to actually get Germany ready to fight, ready to win a war, actually, if necessary. And he's figured that he needs the Bundeswehr officers and its senior cadres in particular on side with that process. So hanging them out to dry as sacrificial lambs wouldn't serve that purpose. Nonetheless, I mean, this hasn't come in isolation. It's just the latest in a failing information security culture that does certainly need to be addressed. And it came in a week where another intelligence scandal broke as well, the revelation that the former senior executive from Wirecard, part of a big scandal in Germany, was actually also a Russian agent for more than 10 years.
We're heading towards European elections now in the month of June. The consensus about supporting Ukraine, how much will that crack after the results of that poll?
Well, obviously it depends on the results, but there's rock solid support for Ukraine across a wide range of Germany's political parties, the four mainstream parties. The extent of that support they differ slightly on, and what needs to be done. I mean, the approach of the Chancellor's party, the SPD, is as long as it takes, whereas the approach of some of the other parties is much more whatever it takes to actually win. But nonetheless, support is there for Ukraine. And the same goes for Germany's population. There's 1/3 who think Germany should be doing more to help Ukraine, 1/3 who say it's about right, and 1/3 who say Germany should be doing less. And so that middle segment is very much up for grabs. And this is where leadership and political communication really come in the next few months to set a clear goal for Germany's involvement in that war, to set the goal that Ukraine must win would be a way of ensuring that public support continues and that people have a clear idea of why Germany's doing what it's doing and what they need to do to actually achieve that goal. That would spike the guns of the populist and extremist parties to the far left and far right, who are exploiting that lack of strategic direction in Germany at the moment by offering their own clear, although sadly wrong, visions.
Benjamin Taus, you mentioned at the outset the concept of hybrid warfare. How much are the Russians trying to influence German public opinion right now?
Oh, Germany is one of the key battlegrounds for that fight over public opinion. Russia has identified there's the possibility to influence that public opinion, certainly, and there's been a lot of good work by German journalists showing the extent to which Germany has been penetrated by agents of influence or by Russian networks. The book, The Moscow Connection, is particularly good in that regard. Along with, I think, America, the US, and Poland, Germany is one of the key battlegrounds for Russian disinformation. And it's not something yet that Germany has fully got to grips with, although that's not only the case in Germany, it's the case in many societies. So this again shows why we need to be out on the front foot, actually setting the agenda rather than being dictated to by dictators, because the surest way to actually build a resilient society is to give people a clear stake in their own future. And that's not 100% apparent to everyone in Germany at the moment. So there's a lot of work to do in substance, but also a lot of work to do on messaging and communication.
Benjamin Taus, so many thanks for speaking with us from Berlin.
Pleasure to be with you. Thanks a lot.
Stay with us. There's much more to come here on France 24. More news plus the day's business and sports.